Afdhel Aziz, I mean, he's got this amazing book, and I sort of got to know him, and it's all about purpose. And he's written this book, which is "Good is the New Cool," and he really has done amazing interviews with amazing companies, amazing brands, amazing businesses who are trying to change, something that matters to them. And so I thought he'd be like an amazing speaker to just go and get his insights, because he's talked to all these incredible companies. And so I'm going to try and extract some of the learning from him.
Good morning from Palm Springs, everybody. Hello.
Palm Springs. Yeah. Yeah. Is it raining there as well?
I know. I think the weather's a little different to where it is in Wales today.
Yeah. A lot different. Yeah. So I've been reading your book, and you've been interviewing loads of people, and I was really curious to know some of your deeper learnings from these people, and like from Pangaya to all these incredible companies out there changing things. And how long did it take to write the book? I mean, writing books is bloody hard work. I mean, you've done a couple now.
It is. Yes, I've got it down to a fine art. So writing for Forbes gives me a great way to write a book in little chunks. So all the articles you see me doing online, a lot of them actually end up making it into the book. And so it's a series of conversations I'm having over a 4-year period. Okay. And then the shape of the book kind of starts to form into something clearer by the end of it. But yeah, I'll say that I'm very privileged because I get to have an optimistic vision of the future. Because the people I talk to every day are doing something remarkable in business or in culture, in creating incredible companies, or transforming giant multinational companies from the inside out. And all of them, I think, have this wonderful desire to leave both the companies in the world better than they found it, And so I feel like I'm an optimist sometimes in a sea of pessimism, because I have a very biased view. I get to see the best of humanity.
I think that being irresponsibly optimistic is a good thing. I mean, I think it's actually the job of the entrepreneur. I mean, because if you actually knew how hard it was going to be, you wouldn't do it. You have to be irresponsibly optimistic. And so
yes, audaciously.
And
audaciously optimistic.
Yeah. And so some of the things that really struck and stayed with you, with all these conversations, can you share with some of the ones that really got to you think, oh my God, these people are doing incredible work here? And it might be one examples that we don't know in the shed here.
Yeah, the very last story in the book, in the Principles of Purpose, was the chapter where myself, Bobby, my co-author, we traveled to Uganda. And we went to this tiny village called Manya, which is right in the middle of Uganda. And we went there as guests of the Cotton On Foundation. And Cotton On is Australia's biggest global fashion retailer. And for 20 years, they have been running a program where if you go into a store, when you check out, you get asked, do you want to buy a tote bag, or do you want to buy this particular item? And all the money goes in the Cotton On Foundation. And we were doing some consultancy work with them, with Conspiracy Above, our consultancy, around what they should do next in terms of the social impact. And they said, well, we want to show you what we've done so far. And so they took us to Uganda, and they showed us this incredible village that had been built purely out of the kindness of strangers buying tote bags 3,000 miles away. And over 20 years, Cotton On Foundation has generated $100 million, Australian dollars, really? That have been put into projects around the world, in Uganda, in Thailand, in Australia. And the reason it's the last chapter in the book is because it blew us away that there was this kind of story happening in the world that people didn't know about, where capitalism and commerce and business had created an incredible life for people who never met each other, but who had found that common purpose and meaning in helping each other as well. So it's stories like that that give me hope that we're just at the beginning of this incredible revolution.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you've got a presentation that you want to share here, and it'd be good to share that if you can. And
yeah. Let's dive in. So I will tell you that this is the first time I'm actually ever giving this presentation. So you guys have to be gentle with me. I wanted to prepare something very respectful of this audience of makers and mavericks themselves, and talk a little bit about a topic that's been on my mind recently, which is about climate change.
Okay.
Here in California, we've been suffering with wildfires. I don't know if you've been seeing the Lake Tahoe fire, which is earlier this year, causing havoc. We were actually in Lake Tahoe about 2 or 3 months before the fire when another one was breaking out. My family and I remember us leaving, heading to the airport, and just seeing the sky full of ash, and seeing kind of like ash sprinkling down and the sky red, and us driving, in this car. At one point we lost cell phone service, and I was like, oh my God, I'm in a disaster movie. I feel like we're in some sort of climate change disaster movie. And it really got me thinking about the narrative of climate change and the narrative of how we fix it. And I wrote an op-ed called The Hope Gap that appeared in Adweek. And I wanted to turn that into a talk. So this is the first time I'm doing this talk. So let me get through it.
Okay.
And then I think we could save some time for a chat at the end, if that's okay.
Thanks, Afdhel.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk by talking about science fiction, because I was a huge science fiction nerd growing up in Sri Lanka. I was born in Sri Lanka in 1973. I was the kind of kid who had his head buried in books throughout his entire childhood. In fact, at one point, I used my parents' and my brother's library cards, and I would borrow 18 books a week to take out. This is how much of a nerd I was. And sci-fi was my particular passion, and I love the stories of people like Isaac Asimov, who wrote the Robot Wars and Foundation, which, by the way, is a fantastic TV show now on Apple TV. You should check it out. I love the short stories of Ray Bradbury, who wrote about things like censorship and things like the social issues through a futuristic lens. But my personal favorite was Arthur C. Clarke. This is Dr. Arthur C. Clarke. And he was my favorite for a couple of different reasons. One was that he had such a positive, optimistic vision of the future and technology. But he also contributed to us seeing things differently. So I don't know if you know this, but he came up with the idea of geostationary satellites in a fixed position. And in honor of that, coming up with that idea, that orbit is actually called the Clarke Belt. NASA gave him that honor. I also liked him because he lived in Sri Lanka. He moved there in the kind of 1970s, 1980s. And I actually had the privilege of meeting him once. I was a kid doing a degree in English literature at King's College in London, and I was writing a paper on how to turn a book into a film, an adaptation. And I picked 2001, and I was going to write about the Stanley Kubrick film. And then I was on holiday back in Sri Lanka, and I realized actually Arthur C. Clarke lives here. And so I kind of found a way to reach out to him, and somewhat miraculously, I found myself spending a day with him in his office. This is his office in Sri Lanka. And he was kind and gracious enough to give this, skinny brown kid his time to talk about the experience of making the film. And I was very cheeky. I asked him, if you remember, 2001 has this amazing hallucinogenic kind of scenes where you're going through kind of a space-time wormhole. And I said, Dr. Clarke, did you ever try any hallucinogenics? And he said, I didn't, but the special effects boys sure did. I did pluck up the courage to ask him if Stanley Kubrick had tried hallucinogenics, but that was pretty funny. But all this to say, sci-fi played a huge role in my life, and fast forward to now me growing up, and there was another source of optimism, which was Star Trek. The original Star Trek series in 1966 it started, and it had this incredibly utopian, multicultural, techno-optimistic view of the future of this humanitarian armada of different species banding together to help make the universe, not just the world, a better place as well. And I know it had an outsized impact, not just on myself, but also on actual scientists and NASA engineers. So many of them have said the show was what made me want to become a scientist, that made me want to become an astronaut. Look at this fantastic picture on the left here. This is Samantha Cristoforetti giving a Vulcan salute to honor Leonard Nimoy after his death. So it's a wonderful example of how fiction and storytelling can inspire actual progress in humanity as well. But something has changed since Star Trek. And what I want to show you is how popular culture and storytelling and advertising have now kind of led us in a different path, a more dystopian and more disturbing vision of the future. So here's a few examples of just movies I've picked at random. I Am Legend, Will Smith alone in New York City after a virus outbreak turns everybody into zombies. Wall-E from the Disney canon, about this lonely robot picking up trash on a completely trashed Earth where all the human beings have left and gone off into space. Blade Runner 2049. This is now twice now the Blade Runner story has kind of returned us to this dystopian vision of a future where there are gigantic seawalls protecting Los Angeles from high water and just a state of ecological devastation. Snowpiercer, one of my favorite movies in 2013, humanity's now living on a train circling around the world. All of humanity going around stuck in coach class. This is now in television as well, as you can see from Black Mirror, presenting this kind of dark and very depressing vision of humanity and how we're kind of evolving. It's in shows like The Handmaid's Tale, which, by the way, for those of you watching what's going on in Texas, is not too far from the truth of what may be happening in the United States. They came back to Snowpiercer. They were like, "Oh, that's so depressing. Let's make a TV show out of it." This is a Snowpiercer TV series that is now running. By the way, so advertising it. By the way, this is my favorite version. They ran out of names, so they were just like, "Let's call this TV show Dystopia." They're not even trying anymore. They're just like, in our future, all the children, all we have to do is kill everyone else. Sundays at 9 o'clock, tune in, right? This is not even limited to movies and TV. This is also advertising. So everybody remembers this amazing Apple TV spot, this kind of Big Brother-esque future with the, hammer thrower destroying the screen, held up as an iconic TV ad. This is Sony PlayStation, another post-apocalyptic carnival ground. This is an ad for Motorola, which again returns us to the kind of version of Big Brother. And so there's something going on where we've kind of collectively decided to kind of dream darkly as well. In fact, there's only one popular recent example where they're showing a utopian future. Can you guess what this is? Anybody? This is Wakanda. This is Wakanda in the movie Black Panther, which, as this wonderful essay from Kendra Pierre-Lewis points out, is the only depiction of a positive utopian future where humanity is living in concert with nature. And it's saying, why aren't there more visions of the world like that? And that's precisely what I think we need to think about next. Because all of this dystopia is having an effect on us as humanity. And this has led to what these scientists and researchers at Yale have found called the hope gap. So this is specifically with regard to global warming, but I think you can apply it to many, many problems in the world. And it's saying This is the gap between people who are hopeful and worried about the issue of climate change. And it's widening as time goes by. And it's fueled by the stories we see on the news each day, which are showing us the issues of climate change without equipping us with any idea of what to do about it. And so there is this creeping kind of anxiety that is now beginning to manifest itself in humanity in very strange ways. So here's a few examples. This is climate despair. It's causing anxiety and depression in people wanting them to give up on life. This is leading us to kids suffering from climate anxiety. I'm the father of a 7-year-old boy, and you can see the dawning realization he's having as he starts to think about the world that he's inheriting. Think about the psychological burden we're placing on our children by getting them to feel like they have to do something about it. In fact, I saw this truly depressing stat which said 67% of 7 to 12-year-olds believe that saving the planet will be their primary goal in the future. That is truly depressing. It's leading people to think about stop having children, about not having children in the first place. There is an entire generation who is debating whether or not to bring children into this world. There are people who regret having them. People are saying, we're not going to have children because of this. In fact, I heard this quote last week from a friend of mine, which really blew my mind. She said, it's maybe time to sit our kids down and have a conversation with them about not having their own children. This is species level extinction happening as we start to think about this problem, right? By the way, this conversation needs to pivot into from not having children to taking care of the children who are out there already who don't have parents. I'm an adoptive parent myself. I hope to do it again. And I look at these numbers. There's 140 million kids out there who are not, who don't have a strong parental system. And they're the ones who are going to be most vulnerable to the climate crisis as the next hit. I around adoption to help these kids as well. But to go back to the main theme, this is the op-ed I wrote in Ad Age. And here's the point I was making. The problem of climate change is no longer a problem of science. The scientists have done everything they can. They have told us until we're blue in the face all the data. Climate change is now a failure of storytelling. And now storytelling is something I know about. I help brands do it. I help companies do it. I've worked with creatives and filmmakers to do it. And I think this is something where I really want to have a call to arms to the storytellers of the world. How do we mobilize storytelling on an unprecedented level to help fill the hope gap? Because what you're seeing now is these kids getting to the point where they don't believe us anymore. They're the ones protesting in the streets. They're the ones who are calling us out for all the bullshit, all the blah, 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 as Greta Thunberg said. And we need to come back with something that helps spark the optimism in humanity. I love this quote from Michael K. Williams, an incredible actor who passed away far too soon. He said, stop thinking about it, try dreaming about it. I like that. I think we need to unleash the collective creative consciousness, our moral imagination, to dream a positive vision of the future. So the call to arms is to filmmakers, to architects, to designers, to creatives of all types. I want to reach out to the James Camerons and the Ridley Scotts and the Charlie Bookers and say, where is our white mirror? Where is our positive vision of the future where we've solved the problem of climate change? And we're presenting that as a fait accompli to humanity to give an alternate view of the dystopian one that's so prevalent. How do we use all of our creative powers to really reimagine what the future could look like so that we can mobilize people to take action now, mobilize governments and mobilize companies as well? If we do this right, I think there is a chance to have a situation where Wakanda isn't the only example out there, and that we can find a world which is one that is filled with balance and meaning and hope and optimism as well. And I'll leave with this final quote from Gene Roddenberry, the creator of Star Trek, who said, "It isn't all over. Everything has not been invented. The human adventure is just beginning." I hope you will join me on this quest to try and fill the hope gap with storytelling. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Afdhel. I love that hope gap, and actually, when you sort of make your thesis about all the images and the things that we're reading and we're like being thrown at each and every day is you can see why the gap is widening, and actually the job of the filmmaker is to go, well, actually we can sort this out, and hope. I think previous speaker Charles Ross said there was a Banksy, and it said there is always hope, and I think that's very powerful. And I think we've got a few minutes for some questions.
When you shut your eyes and dream, what's the most hopeful? What's the wildest dream? What's the most exciting version that you can imagine? And can you put some colour to what that vision might look like?
Yeah, to me, I think there's two industries that I really want to see mobilized. And one of them is right here in Los Angeles, where I live, which is the film and TV industry, right? And so I'm writing a version of that op-ed for Variety and the Hollywood Reporter to spark a debate here. I think what would be amazing is how we use the power of storytelling, to, as I said, create this vision, but also give people a role in it. I think there's two slightly different things, right? One is this big overarching techno optimism vision of the future where we've solved climate change. But the second thing I think people are looking for is what to do. And I think that's where the other industry that I'm more familiar with, which is advertising and branding and business, can play a huge role in giving people that role and saying, well, here's how behavior shifts can help change with optimism around climate change. Here are the little things you can do, not only because doing them will play your part, but because doing them will send a signal to industry to say, we are hungry for solutions around how to live a climate-friendly life. We are hungry for products and services and innovations. I hope it will send a signal to governments and municipalities. The question that's bugging me at the moment is, if 50% of the world's population lives in 1,000 cities or so, which is about the number, why aren't the kind of recycling systems in those cities incredibly world-class circular economy systems? Why is the burden placed on consumers to do all the work to fix the problems of the planet? So I think that what I'm trying to get to is there needs to be a grand overarching vision, but there also needs to be the activation of that vision through partnerships, through collaboration, through individual action. And that's where I hope those two industries, movies and storytelling and brands and advertising, can work together to really fit both of those needs as well.
Very good.
Hey there, Afdhel. Thank you. A fantastic presentation. I used to live in LA. I moved here from there. People look at me like, why did you leave LA for England? But I also don't tan. I glow in the dark, so that's why. As a fellow sci-fi geek, have you read The Ministry for the Future by Kim Stanley Robinson?
No.
So
I'm writing it down.
I've only just I'm listening to it because with kids I have no time to actually read a physical book. But a friend of mine, longtime friend, she's been homeschooling her now 18-year-old son, like super dedicated to being a very engaged citizen of planet Earth. She's always been like, we're screwed, we're doomed, it's all awful. And then she got in touch about a month ago saying, have you read this book? The premise is a future history of everything that's happened from like 2024 until 2100, when we've solved everything.
Wow.
The impetus, and what's fantastic though is everything that everyone's been talking about today. There's regenerative agriculture, there's blockchain and Bitcoin, that like all these things that made no sense to me. But what's fantastic about it is it's the model, without doing a spoiler alert, it's that there is no overarching thing. It's 1,000 little things, a million hands all pushing in the right direction. So it's just, I love Blade Runner, the original, and then I love Blade Runner 2046. But they're so depressing that you're right, this failure of imagination. Anyway, so it's a fantastic point, I think. As an American, having lived through Trump years, having got through the other side of it, hopefully we're on the upswing. So
Yeah.
Fantastic. But check it out. It's a really good book.
Wow, I'm going to get it.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'll tell you something that is also what gives me hope as well is I think we're having like a species level of enlightenment about our role in the world and our purpose, our individual purpose, and how that ladders up to the collective purpose of humanity as well. And so alongside the lack of the imagination, what has also been lacking has been the will, right? The appetite. Do you know this? You know how they say the only thing that would make humanity band together is if aliens attacked us? It would make us forget all of our differences. COVID-19 is the closest thing to an alien attack, something that has affected every part of humanity. It's been a collective trauma for the whole planet. And in the work that I'm doing for the third book, which is about individual purpose, trauma is always the precondition to people finding purpose. And so what I'm hoping is that because the world has had this collective trauma, we've all dodged a meteor, we've all dodged an alien invasion, that now there's finally the will to go alongside that understanding to go, all right, we now need to get together. We need to mobilize against these massive problems like climate change or inequality or racial justice. And so that alongside the blueprint is what I feel hopeful about in this moment.
Very good. Oh, okay. One final question, just to finish off. Yeah.
What is the best way to get governments to focus? Because while it's great that Cotton On has 100 million, between America and Europe, they print $6 billion a day. How do we get them to focus and reorient?
Yeah, it's a great question. I used to be a skeptic and a cynic about government. I used to think government had failed and it was up to corporations to fix things. But then I've heard David Axelrod speak. He was one of President Obama's senior advisors. And he said, listen, the thing you got to realize is government and corporations are the only things that work in trillions. And so you can't abandon government. And I think that's where what we need is a new compact between government and business, where they can work in tandem. A great metaphor that I heard is that, government can raise the floor, helping the people who are the neediest amongst us, providing that welfare net of health and education and safety, and corporations can raise the ceiling. Corporations can innovate and invent things like electric cars and solar panels and nuclear fusion reactors to power things. And so I think what's needed is this move from government and corporations butting heads against each other to them working together. And I think actually the secret is cities. I think cities are the place where that can happen without those big kind of overarching kind of competing interests. And I think cities are happening as well. So yeah, that's my view. That's how I think both of them need to work together, because there's no other way out of these problems if it isn't done through cooperation.
No, very good. I want to say a big thank you for like an amazing presentation. You are like super articulate, bloody hell. So it's a very warm thank you from a relatively cold West Wales, but we need to get you over here and experience some rain. So, keep doing the amazing work.
Next year in the shed.
Yeah, and I think
right,
you've helped close that gap, and you've given us a little bit of hope, because I think that's actually really important. So I appreciate it, and I hope to speak soon. And good luck with the third book. And take care now.
Thanks, guys. See you in the chat too. Bye.